Hear, O Israel, the great I am, the great spirit, is the only power for you. The great I am, the great spirit is one. Speak peace into the ears of the people so that they could see on this day of rest. Rise, O Yashar'Al. Welcome to Word War 3. Our reference today will be Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 2. And this message will be entitled Apology for the Negro Struggle, or positive law. Now, positive law, let's touch on that real quick. Positive law means statutes, and it is the European culture to pass on their rule to either their children or the people that are paying attention to their culture. Now, integration of law-abiding citizens means people of various cultures must obey the forefathers or of European statutes. And we here at Indigenous Hebrew Israelite Awakening, we recognize the Europeans known today as the Edomites. So one more time, let me reiterate. In an integrated society, people of various cultures and backgrounds must obey the law and the statutes of the Europeans we call Edomites. In 1701, in Smith versus Gould, Chief Justice Holt, who was the Chief Justice of the Court of the King's Bench in the United Kingdom, held that trover did not lie for taking a slave. He observed, meaning the Chief Justice, by the common law, no man can have a property in another. By the common law, no man can have a property in another. And he added, there is no such thing as a slave by the law of England. By the law. But here comes the statute. You see, because the statutes are passed down from father to son and to, by inheritance. These are statutes or rules of your ancestors saying, hey, you do this so that your tribe can keep going. Statutes. It's even biblical. But we're going to keep going. In 1705, Smith versus Brown, the same Chief Justice, folks. In 1705, Smith versus Brown and Cooper, Chief Justice Holt stated, as soon as a Negro comes into England, he becomes free. One may be a villain in England, but not a slave. Unquote. Now, this is the early 1700s. Now, we remind you to go back and reread Somerset versus Stewart. Now, Somerset was considered a slave in England. He was taken and brought over to England, and he was going to be sold into the Caribbean by his European master, Stewart. In that case, the crown allowed documents of a person who was Christianized to be recognized. And these documents, I guess, is a part of the statute law. They're going to recognize documents. Even knowing that this man was considered a slave by his master, they recognize documents. Overall, hey, this guy has a paper trail history, sort of say. Now, again, positive law, folks, is statute law. Whereas the Bible, you can refer to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 2. In fact, read the whole chapter. Deuteronomy chapter 6. It's literally Moses, speaking on behalf of God, saying, hey, you children of Israel, you do this to your children and your children's children. Do these things, which are statutes. Do these things, and your spawn, your children, your offspring, your people, your tribe will be well. Do these things. And we have a Christian society, a white Christian society, a Greco-Roman Christian society who once tried to use the Bible to justify slavery. But these Hebrew practices, these Hebrew statutes are not European. So they can't be equated to what the Europeans are doing today, historically, as how America has treated the blacks, their blacks, based upon a Hebrew statute law. Because there's nothing in common law that they say, there's nothing in common between the Hebrew law and what the Europeans are doing in their statute culture. And we come down to the apology, where all these things that have been done to the people that are called black, what we have, what has gone on already is it's called Project Joseph of Ghana. The Ghanaians are apologizing for the slave trade, for what happened back then. The Danish Queen Margaret II, the Danes are apologizing for what happened in Nigeria. The Benin president Matthew Kereko, if that's pronounced correctly, of Dahomey, Benin was called Dahomey back then. These governments are apologizing. The Owulo of Iwo, and again, this is the chief priest of the Iwo people in Nigeria. Apologizing for selling, as he claimed, for selling his brothers, and for the chiefs of old selling their children, their relatives, into this slave market. The Anglican Church of the United Kingdom is apologizing for the slave trade that the colonial empire once done. Now, we have the United States, who operates by contract law, these statutes, or positive law. We have this resolution 194 of the 110th Congress. And that Congress was in 2007 through 2008. Along the same time, the first black president was being elected. And the last thing that Congress did with that resolution, it was to motion to reconsider, to lay on the table, agreed to without objection. So they're still reconsidering this resolution. And what does it have in it? Let's read from this resolution. It says, whereas African Americans continue to suffer from the complex interplay between slavery and Jim Crow. Number 3, apologizes to African Americans on behalf of the people of the United States for the wrongs committed against them and their ancestors, who suffered under slavery and Jim Crow. Long after, both systems were formally abolished through enormous damage and loss, both tangible and intangible, including the loss of human dignity, the frustration of careers and professional lives, and the long-term loss of income and opportunity. What was resolved? It says resolved that the House of Representatives, number 3, we're going down to 3, apologize to African Americans on behalf of the people of the United States. That's most important. For the wrongs committed against them and their ancestors who suffered under slavery and Jim Crow. And you can see the links. I'll put it down in links in the bottom. That's important, folks. Senate Congress Resolution number 26 of the 110th Congress. And that Congress was in 2009 through 2010, while your first black president was president. And again, it's another apology. It apologized to the African Americans on behalf of the people of the United States for the wrongs committed against them and their ancestors who suffered under slavery and Jim Crow laws. And again, slavery and Jim Crow laws, folks, these are statutes from European society. Statutes. Now, Indigenous Hebrew Israelite Awakening have already done a reading, a video. We've done a segment on maintaining or achieving a peace treaty with the United States. We are captured people. No matter how you look at it, we are captured. And this forced integration system have taken away what our ancestors told us. I mean, we were called Naga, Negusi by our ancestors, which means prince of the power or rulers of our own flesh. And we can't do that operating in an integrated society that tells us that we must throw away what our ancestors told us and listen to the harsh reality of integration of a society that only looks at the documents of their own forefathers. This is a travesty. This is a tragedy. This is a trouble to the people who are to be integrated, and falsely represented. There's no Negro going to the United Nations or going to other countries speaking on behalf of what our own ancestors said. They have to have an integrated mind to try to please everyone in the United States based upon the documentation and integration of the Europeans. And folks, this is unfair to the people who belong here naturally. It's unfair to the people who were forced to come here by a contract order and statute law of human trafficking murderers. It's unfair for even regular citizens to think that integration as defined by the United States is that people should be afraid of, what the government is saying based upon what culture is. Well, everybody has their own culture. But when you force this integration, and we must recognize people as equal, when you look at me and you see that my skin is darker than you, automatically based upon the history of the United States, I'm going to be deemed black, which signifies sinister and evil. And right there, those are opportunities lost to a person who looks just like me. It's a damage. And it's one of the main reasons why I keep saying black people should sue for peace. And that the United States and everyone connected to it, out of motion and fully entrust and put full trust in that repayment through reparations. Now, these resolutions are still in the books, and all they need to be done, all that needs to happen is that they either get a presidential signature or a congressional signature that makes them public law. Because they can sit in the House or in the Congress forever. They can sit there forever. As long as they're not signed into law, we're here sitting and waiting for some people who keeps telling us that we're free and equal in an integrated society that, as you see here, still overlooking us. If you like what you heard, drop a comment below. Like it, and even donate if you like. I'll put all this information in the comment block or in the subject box below. I am a Hebrew Israelite. I am a conscientious objector and a minister of peace. Hebrew Israelite out.